Everybody wave hi to the camera. All right, well, welcome to Closing the Loop. We're going to be talking about recycling and infrastructure and what we can do to get beyond recycling as well, and closing the loop and circular systems, all kinds of fun stuff. We're going to try to have some fun as well. I'm going to introduce the panelists, but first I wanted to ask you a question. Who thinks the recycling system in the U.S. is broken and we need to fix it so it works better? Okay. Who thinks we need to radically change the nature of product design and manufacturing instead? Aha, it was a trick question.
I like the unanimous answer.
Great, me too. So, our objective today is to find out why recycling is so broken, what we can do about really changing the way we think about products and their life cycles. There's reduce, recycle, reuse, rot, and now rethink and redesign. Our panel today is just a sort of diverse set of experts from a different variety of fields, which I think you saw, to help us figure out what's happening and what can be done to take us to the next level. So I'm going to introduce our panelists and then we'll ask the first question. At some point we'll have some interactive stuff as well. Make sure you get to ask some questions too. So Doug Kobold is the Executive Director of the California Product Stewardship Council. Doug's been talking trash for nearly 27 years. Previously he spent over 18 years with Sacramento County as the Waste Management Program Manager, Manager of Business Development, and Solid Waste Planner. He's involved in a number of product stewardship organizations, including on the advisory committees of the California Carpet Recycling and Mattress Recycling Councils. He currently serves as Vice Chair of the California Chapter's Legislative Task Force of the Solid Waste Association of North America, aka SWANA. Doug frequently presents at conferences including WasteCon and SWANapalooza, and we will hopefully learn a little bit more about that at some point. Nicole Tai is the CEO of Green Links, leading the construction, reuse operations, consulting, woodworks, and deconstruction teams based in Santa Rosa. Her area of expertise includes building materials, reuse operations startups, reclaimed materials markets, construction and demolition permitting, compliance and scheduling, reuse and wood waste facility data analysis, reuse facility financial planning, project estimation, tribal waste management and deconstruction, public speaking, community building, and green building and reuse training.
You could cut that in half, Cory.
She co-founded the Reuse Alliance in 2004 and the newer Bay Area Deconstruction Working Group in 2017, and we're hoping to hear more about that as well. Rob Chase is the founder of NewGen Surgical, a manufacturer of sustainably designed, single-use disposable medical devices. NewGen Surgical's mission is to minimize plastic waste generated in healthcare by reimagining products that are not able to be recycled or reprocessed. A Marin County native, Rob studied sustainability at Dominican University of California, right here over there in San Rafael, and is dedicated to bringing sustainable product solutions to the healthcare industry, which is one of the most challenging industries, as you heard this morning. He was recently recognized as a 2019 Game Changer by the North Bay Business Journal. He's developed products for the healthcare industry that are truly game changers, the most prominent of which is a surgical skin stapler made entirely out of the residue left after the extraction of juice from sugarcane. We'll hear more about that as well. And Patty Garbarino, one of my local heroes, is the president of Marin Sanitary Service, Marin Recycling Center, and Marin Resource Recovery Center, and was the first woman president of the California Refuse Recycling Council. Today, Patty is responsible for policy development, implementation, and the overall management and oversight of the operations of the company during especially a really challenging time. Patty also remains directly involved in all aspects of the company's governmental and community relations, as well as her PET, the public education program, which she created and which is well regarded throughout the county. Patty's been recognized for her civic and community contributions, including being inducted in the Marin Women's Hall of Fame, honored with a Women in Business Award for Environmental Service, and Citizen of the Year by the City of San Rafael. So, we'll start with Patty because we got to start with the problem. Patty, what's wrong with the recycling system? What's causing this crisis we've been reading about? And what needs to happen to address what's happening?
Okay, well let me just ask, because I'd like to get to know the audience, how many of you in your residential setting have single stream recycling?
Patty, what is single stream?
Single stream is when you put bottles, cans, newspaper, paper products all in the same container. Okay, you're the problem. That's the reason why China cut off the market. The other problem started because if you can imagine, you've got bottles, glass, pressed into in a packer truck because of the volume of waste that we all produce as Americans, which is way too much, whether it's recycled or not. in the back of a packer truck, a garbage truck. The glass shards then get permeated into all of the rest of the paper product. Nobody wants that paper. Our contamination rate for years and years and years was less than 1% in our curbside recycling program. It's now up to 11%. It's up to 11% because of the other problem. Manufacturers will tell you that everything is recyclable. How many shop at Walmart? Good for you. Okay. But Walmart will also tell you that when you go into a Walmart, absolutely everything you buy, including the packaging, is recyclable, and that simply is not the case. So people believe that because they want to do the right thing and they're invested in the future and they want to save resources for the next generation. But what happens? They put everything into the recycling container. That then, mostly in single stream programs, we operate a dual sort system, so we're different a bit. Our bottles, cans, containers, and paper are all separated. So we've been able actually, as an aside, to sustain our markets overseas. And I'll get to the other problem in just a sec. But if they're putting all of that into their recycling, there's really no sorting system in the world that's going to separate all of that out down at our place. And consequently, it wound up in China, Vietnam, all of the Pacific Rim, in India, Afghanistan. It wound up everywhere, and we were literally polluting the world with our trash. Our number one export as a nation, by the way, is our trash, whether that be trash or recyclables. The other problem is, years ago, and I've been in this job 32 years, it seems like either just yesterday or 50 years ago, but when I first took this job, and we as Californians were in the process actually throughout the United States of dismantling all of our paper mills and sending them overseas. And we did that because there was the de-inking process that was polluting the water supply in the areas where you had a paper mill. Shame on us. So imagine that carbon footprint. Even though if you operate a recycling center, your carbon footprint, your calculation, your zero waste achievement is 27 times over in the negative. So we're a carbon sink because of the recycling. But schlepping all of that stuff across the seas, shame on us. We've got to bring that stuff back here, deal with our own waste, reprocess it here, buy recycled, and I could go on and on, but I don't know.
Well, just quickly, a quick follow-up. Are we doing that? Are we starting to build more recycling centers here in the U.S. with the China crisis? Is that spurring us to do the right thing like crises sometimes do?
I keep telling my industry that that's what we've got to do on the West Coast. Marin Sanitary belongs to the California Refuse Recycling Council and the West Coast Recycling Council as well. And my father and I and my colleagues all get to speak nationally. We keep floating that balloon. It would take a Herculean effort in order to get something like that. We're looking for investors to do so. California regulations are almost prohibitive. Now, interestingly, China, which more than you probably want to hear, but China actually went through a greening effort during their last presidential election. And that's why we see the China sword coming in and cutting off most single stream facilities. Again, we've been able to sustain our markets, but we'd rather keep that here. So China is now buying the closed plants and reopening them here in the U.S. We need to learn from them. If they can do it, then we need to find the investors to do so as well. If for no other reason, for the benevolence of doing so. You might not make money at it, you might eventually, but it's an opportunity and it should happen.
Well, that's really interesting. You know, I've been reading about the slow money movement lately, and just we have this need to get 5, 6, 7% returns. But if we agreed that 1% returns were enough, then more things like this might actually get financed. Doug, I want to follow up with you. First of all, she's got 8 years on you talking trash.
She's much better at it.
Number one item exported is trash. Recycling system broken. What I heard you say when we asked the question was, it's always been broken. Tell us about what another model is, this circular economy idea, and what the Product Stewardship Council does.
Right, so what we endorse and advocate for at the California Product Stewardship Council is for the circular economy and extended producer responsibility. So and we call it EPR, that's our favorite term. What EPR does is it's going back to the manufacturer and saying, manufacturer, you're making a product that's a problem. It doesn't have markets at the back end. It's very expensive to disassemble. I'll counter what Patty said about one thing. She said, Walmart says it's recyclable. Walmart is actually right. Everything is recyclable, but the question is at what cost? How much would it cost to take a phone completely apart down to its minuscule piece? It's not economical at all.
And does the technology exist to the market?
Exactly. So, yeah, if we really wanted to spend all that money, we could actually recycle everything, but it's not going to be a reality. It's not a reality. We can't get there. So we have to go back to where these things are produced. Who's making these products? Who's making the choices to design the products the way they are? When you buy a product right now and it's enveloped in a plastic, I'm not going to name a resin right this second, but I will in a minute, and that product has a sleeve of cardboard in it. How many of you, when you cut the bottom off to get the product out, leave that sleeve of cardboard in there and throw that into the recycle bin? You do that, Patty, you can't market that. Because now you've just contaminated either one, the paper, because now the plastic's with the paper, or you contaminated the plastic with the paper. So those end up in the landfill. They don't get recycled in most cases. So is there a better way to design that than having that sleeve in there and trying to get the consumers to think about pulling that sleeve out? So phones, I always like to pick on our phones because our smartphones are our devices to the world nowadays, and we all have one. The electronics industry responded to consumer demand. They wanted a long-lasting battery and a watertight phone, so when you dropped it in the toilet or went in the pool with you or anything like that, you didn't have a dead phone. So what they do, they made the choice, they sealed that phone up. They made another bad choice though. They decided, we're going to seal the battery into the phone. If you remember the phones of the past where we could actually pull the battery out, when the battery went dead, pop a new battery in and we still had a good phone. You can't do that anymore. You can try to get it fixed, but you avoid the warranties, there's all kinds of things, and it's expensive to get it replaced. So, what happens? For consumerism, we're all buying brand new phones when the phone we just had may be perfectly good. All they had to do with that design change is to actually design so that the battery is on the external part of the seal. The battery's not going to get hurt if it gets wet. The contacts aren't going to get hurt. Pull the battery out, let it dry out, put it back in, the phone's still working. That's all they had to do, but instead they made it designed for obsolescence, is what we call it, when they're making it so they can just sell more. So these are the things that CPSC is trying to get out there, is change the mindsets, like Rob did with his. He's using materials, reusing materials that would have otherwise gone to the landfill to make a product. And he's one of our award winners last year for his stapler. And so here's a manufacturer who changed their design. They made that choice, and they did it voluntarily. And we're not going to get all of the manufacturers to volunteer to make these design changes. Sometimes we're going to do what we do best, which is we get into the Capitol. We spend a lot of time in the Capitol lobbying for bills that change their mind for them if they won't do it on their own. So that's what we're going to have to do, is get that mindset changed at the manufacturer level.
So circular design is the idea is that you don't make an item that then you rely on a local government or ratepayers, customers, people that have to pay to have their refuse picked up, deal with it. That you, as the manufacturer, actually design in a way that knows that either you can take it back and reuse it or recycle it, or that there's some system in place to do that from the design from the very beginning.
Right. So one of the things we try to do is if we can get extended producer responsibility, or EPR, in there, the producers pay for that. And so guess what? If they're paying the true cost at their end of life of their products, they're going to design it differently. They might design it so they can take those products right back and remake them into the new products. A cell phone, probably not, but the reality is plastics that they're using, so the type of resins they're choosing, they are going to save dollars before they save the planet. Most of them. They're going to do it through a penny per pound on one resin over another. What if one resin costs a penny or two per pound more because it has a market? Because it has a recycle market, but then that other cheaper one doesn't. They might choose that other one. Why should they? If there's no real difference and it doesn't affect their packaging, why wouldn't they choose that better one? We need to make them make that decision and choose that different product.
So do you have circular design karaoke at Swanapalooza or what? What do you do at Swanapalooza?
So for Swanapalooza, we're promoting EPR and product stewardship. So let me define the difference between, and I said two of them for a purpose. EPR is when we actually require the manufacturers to share in the end-of-life costs, take responsibility. Product stewardship is your carpet program, your mattress program, your paint programs that we have in California. Those are not extended producer responsibility. If anybody ever tells you they're producer responsibility, they are flat out wrong. Because guess what? Who pays to get those materials recycled? The fee payers. Fee payers. When you go buy a gallon of paint, you pay 75 cents. When you buy a carpet, you're paying 38 cents a square yard. If you buy a mattress, you're paying $10.50 per unit for each piece of that mattress. That's going into a fund that is managed by the industry, that's being regulated, but the manufacturers have nothing to do with it. I'll give you a perfect example. I'd love to pick on Sealy because Sealy has not changed their ways, and this is what we want to do. We want to get them to change their ways. Have you ever heard of Posturepedic?
Yeah.
Individually wrapped coils? Do you know that every one of those mattresses that comes back is landfilled directly? None of them are recycled? Even though we have a robust mattress recycling program in California, it's because those individually wrapped pocket coils cannot be recycled. So the recyclers who are breaking down the mattresses know there's not enough value in the rest of the mattress to make it worthwhile to even open it up, so it just goes straight to the landfill. So there's an example where the consumers are paying for that. You guys as consumers are paying for it. The manufacturer, Sealy, feels no pain for that, and so they are not going to change their design. They've made it loud and clear. They will not change their design. And I've heard that from the electronics industry. Make them pay for it. They'll tell you they still won't change their design. But I guarantee you, if we start making them pay for what they're creating, they will change their design.
So Nicole, we've been talking about all these products. The product that you deal with is a much bigger product that we don't even think of as products. But there's a lot of waste in the building industry, especially when you demolish buildings. It's a topic that most people aren't paying attention to as much. Single-use plastics is one thing, and when it all adds up, it's a lot of waste. But one building teardown produces a lot of waste. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in this area, in the region and state, and a little bit about that working group?
Yeah. So I'll do what Patty did. How many of you have done remodeling in your house? How many of you have demolished a house and rebuilt a house? 2. Okay. So anybody who's done remodeling, you have contributed to landfilling wood, any painted wood, even clean wood in some cases, unless you took it to Patty. Then it got burned in biomass. And then if it was concrete, it got recycled. Concrete is our best bet in terms of recycling when it comes to construction and demolition waste. So when you hear C&D, it means construction and demolition waste. So my company does deconstruction, so we take buildings down purposely to reuse as much as possible. And typically, you're supposed to get 65% by taking it to a facility like Marin Sanitary. And I'll get into that maybe later on why that might be a problem and is a problem now. But if you demolished your house, you created enough waste for your entire lifetime. So the amount of waste that you create over your lifetime, if you demolished a house, you just created double the amount of waste in your lifetime that a normal human creates. And that's first world. Third world, we won't talk about. You don't create nearly as much as we do. So it's a massive amount of waste. It's your whole lifetime in one house. So in terms of tonnage and what gets recycled and what gets landfilled. So it's a big endeavor, and what we do is we take houses down. It takes about 1 week per 1,000 square feet to deconstruct a house, and to demolish a house takes about an hour per 1,000 square feet. So huge difference. It might be about a day or 2 to take all that material off site, haul it and take it off site. But so 1 hour, one guy running the excavator, tearing the house down, and another guy watering it down so that the lead and asbestos don't spray over all your neighbors. My crew takes about a week to take everything out of the house. And we are taking materials out to sell them at our store. Sometimes they get donated. That's like the most fun part of my job is when we get to do donations. But it's happening less and less lately just because of logistics and costs. So 9.5% is what the state calculates is recoverable wood in our waste stream. So out of 100% of our waste stream, we have kind of 2 ways that materials go to a transfer facility. One is through the trash trucks that we see every day in our neighborhoods, and they're going to transfer facilities. Sometimes they go straight to landfill. That number is being threatened right now. So in a number of different ways, but just to make it really short, one way is, if you think about it, the transfer stations, they get certified to recycle a percentage. So ideally they do 65% or above. If they're less than that, a lot of cities and counties won't let you use that facility if you do a deconstruction or a demolition project. And it won't count. So somehow people are doing it and getting away with it. It still is happening, but that's another story. And then the other thing that happens is you take it directly to someone like me, or you take it to a concrete recycler, where the materials get directly recycled and turned into road base or concrete again. In my case, we take materials like cabinets and doors and windows and lumber, and we fix them up and we put them on the sales floor and we sell them, or we turn them into another product like a table or a bench or something. So, so you have all different kinds of, we call it source separation happening. And that's one thing that's threatening the transfer facilities numbers. So they're not reaching 65% when it comes to construction now. But in a lot of cases, and I don't know about Marin Sanitary, I think that they are probably one of the best examples in the state. So they're probably not worried about this so much, but other transfer stations that don't have the connections and the amazing commitment to environmental values, they are not reaching 65. They've never been reaching 65, but their number is based on everything that comes into their site. So all the bottles, all the cans, all the metal, all the concrete. And so their number was reaching 65 because of what was coming in on the trash trucks and what was coming on the construction trucks. So, but the law is you have to divert 65% from your project, not from the transfer station. So they've been getting away with this for years. And we're just starting to figure this out. So City of San Francisco is all over this and is trying to figure out how they can fix that system within their ordinances, and other cities and counties are starting to figure this out as well. So it's a huge problem, in addition to the fact that we have a wood waste crisis. So this is all doom and gloom, but I will get to positive things, I swear. So we're calling it Wood-A-Geddon, and basically what that means is all wood there's two kinds of wood. There's clean, meaning you can turn it into mulch, or you can burn it, or you can use it and put it into your house. And then there's dirty, which is anything that's painted, that's treated, like pressure-treated lumber, or that might have some sort of contaminant in it. And those get directly landfilled, or in some cases have to go to a special landfill. So what happens with all that lumber now is in question. And in my case, I take it back to my store, we sell it, done. For most demolition companies, it becomes a kind of a mixture, like Patty was saying, of just kind of a goop that really just can't be sold as a byproduct to anyone. And so they're trying to figure out how to source separate it. And in good cases, they were taking it to what's called biomass. They were chipping it, putting it on a truck. So they would chip it at their facility, put it on a truck, and then ship it off to Woodland or Chunchilla or various other biomass or cogeneration facilities, and the wood was waste to energy, basically, which is actually, wood has a very high BTU value, so might not necessarily be the worst way to make energy, but yeah, better than the alternative, which is to let it sit in a mulch pile and create methane, which is a short-lived greenhouse gas, yada, 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 bad stuff. So, get to positive?
Just, yes, exactly. And
so
barrier to deconstruction.
Yeah, so 2 years ago, we all kind of saw the writing on the wall, and my industry is very much head in the sand. We're all really busy doing what we do. We have zero margins. In fact, most of us operate on a negative on a regular basis. And so we rarely get together. We are always fighting. It's trash. That's what we do. We fight. So I was like, you know what? We got to get over this. We need to start some co-opetition. We need to start talking to each other. We need to start lobbying for what we need. And so I asked a friend of mine at the EPA, hey, could you we are like our go-between and host a deconstruction work group. And she agreed to. That's Timothy Hood, and she's awesome. She's a rock star when it comes to collaboration and creating awesome community change. So we got together about 2 years ago. It's contractors that do what I do, reuse facilities like ours. It's contractors who are in the residential and the commercial sector, city, state agencies, Bay Area Air Quality Management District. All kinds of folks have come to the table and started to talk about this huge problem. We are basically 10%. Recoverable wood is 10% of our waste stream. It's a massive amount of waste, and we can do something about it. And we're working on it. So, yeah.
So, private business trying to do something good, not making any money. Let's go to the private sector here too.
Yeah.
Doug, how do you do it? You're in the private sector space, so you're in that area of what Doug was talking about, circular design, or looking at the design of products so that there's not so much waste, or using waste products to create things that are not made out of plastic, and you're in one of the most difficult industries. But you seem to be making it worse. How do you do it? What's your major challenge, and how are you able to make ends meet?
Well, I think that there's a lot of the challenge is economic, and so we hear this consistently across the board, whether it's having enough recycling centers or getting the producers to design it into their products, the cost of that. So it really comes down to economics, and that's one of our biggest barriers. Is there's nothing less expensive than oil and plastic, and so that's why we have it, and it's everywhere. And all the stuff that we use, whether it's a coffee stirrer or or a surgical product, it's used throughout all of our lives. So how do we get off our addiction to plastic? How do we move off of a non-renewable material to a sustainable material, something that's not going to persist in the environment and pollute for generations? So the biggest barrier is economics. Our stuff costs a little bit more to produce.
It's not subsidized billions and billions of dollars a year like the oil industry.
No. So we do I think a very good job in looking at where do we find efficiencies in the design or in the manufacturing. How do we produce these like items that are sustainable in design and offer them at a cost that's close to a plastic product, so that for the people that are socially conscious or that know that we need to move this direction, it's at least, it's not twice as much. It's maybe 30% more, 40% more, and try to make it palatable. And then look at all the other benefits that come with moving in that direction. But the cost is probably the biggest thing.
And what is a surgical skin stapler? And why do they have to be disposable?
Well, so in healthcare, most people don't realize, but healthcare generates a huge amount of waste. So it's 13,000 tons of waste every day coming out of the hospitals in the U.S. And then 35% of that waste is generated in the operating room, which you would imagine that's where they're using a lot of single-use stuff and gloves and everything else, and it's just bags and bags of waste. And so that is really where our focus. We're tackling it, that industry and that problem at the source, the biggest source of the problem. The question was
skin stapler. Why is it?
Yeah, so a lot of the items that are used, they get blood on them, there's patient contact, and so they get thrown away, or they go in a sharp bin. So there's different types of waste that's generated. Some can be, go to landfill, some has to be red bagged and treated separate, and then there's sharps waste. And so many of these things that we're working on end up in a sharps waste stream, which ends up being landfill. So a skin stapler is one of those things. It's used at the end of surgery. It's for closure of the skin. It's the last step of the surgical procedure, and it's something that is, it's used in every operating room and all around the world. So it's a really high volume, single-use item, but it's also
Stapler itself?
yes, yeah.
Amazing, huh?
but it's one that we thought, it was the first proof of concept, the idea. So we could have picked easier products. That one was
Lesson learned. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. You learn if you go down this road.
Thank you. Patty,
Yeah.
practical advice. Say we got how many are private business in private industry? Great. And how many are in nonprofit? And how many in other? Good. Okay. So what would your advice be to a business or other organization or enterprise that wants to reduce waste, especially in lieu of the current and upcoming state mandates?
Okay, well, and I do not mean this to be an ad for my company. I thank you for the comments that you all made. But I think the best thing you can do, and I'm not certain if you're all from Marin County, is partner with a good hauler. In our case, we have a wonderful partnership with the jurisdictions that we serve. It's an exclusive contract. Some would even call it a monopoly. But what it does is there's a great deal of scrutiny over us financially and now programmatically. And that's emerged over the last 10, 12 years, whereby new programs are developed together for the benefit of this organization, the community. So I would say to partner up with people like Jen and Alex and all good people. Andy, sorry. Andy's new. Patty's bad with names and 64. So that would be my start, because they've got the resources. This is what they do every single day, and they believe in it. It's a passion. They've got the outreach information to get to your employees. They've got the resources to do waste audits. So that's an eye-opener, right? Let me just give a great example, and I'm not pointing fingers at the city of San Rafael. Stellar recyclers, and one of our customers to City Hall is. But we couldn't figure out why the diversion rate was X. It was under what we had anticipated because everything had been source separated. Janitorial staff was comingling material at the end, which is the Achilles heel, so that's a little bit of a warning. You've got to educate everyone from the greeter at the door to the person who does the janitorial at night. And they're there generally at night, so you're going to have to work after hours to get them on board. But they've got to understand that it affects their bottom line. Jen, you would, or Cassie would know what we've saved the Marin County school system, but it's hundreds of thousands of dollars in paying the garbage bill that they did not need to pay by recycling. So getting in there, and actually when I first got started, I was a teacher before, so that's why I'm so much in favor of education. I've taught the severely handicapped. But I learned quickly when I got this job, and frankly I had this job because my father owns the company, so I just want to really be honest. But
This is a tough interview.
it's not been easy ever since. But I learned quickly that in the curriculum in the state of California in the second grade is this kind of education. Recycling is that one way that you can prevent pollution. Now we know it helps in, and I can see the sign over there, the San Rafael Climate Action Plan. It helps with all of our recycling efforts to get compliance with AB 32 and Schwarzenegger's goal of trying to save the planet by reducing carbon emissions. So, and then in the fourth grade, we're lucky enough, mostly in all fourth grades, to have students come through our facility. Again, education. We've got about 3,200 students that come through a year. So, am I off base on my answer? I can't remember the question.
No, it's good.
Okay.
It's what practical things can businesses do?
Yeah,
and the other
buddying up.
piece of that is going to be, the upcoming composting mandates.
Oh, right. Okay.
So first is check with your hauler, see what kind of resources they have, see if they can come out and help you. They will help businesses, nonprofits, organizations figure out where the sticking points are and help you get over them.
Well, and I kind of, as far as composting goes, I get back to, we've got a wonderful partnership. The city of San Rafael and the city of Larkspur started us off on in food waste to energy. So all of those pre-consumer items that you can't eat because you don't want to waste food. That's the worst thing. You want to live like your grandparents. Do not waste food. That is a sin. But all that pre-consumer, the clippings and the trimmings and whatnot, go into a digester at the in our case at the Central Marin Sanitation Agency, which is a popper of a tour if you want to take it, but you want to skip that first room. That was not So that makes energy as well, and has gotten that place completely off the grid. So again, it all gets back to, and I know we had our conversation, if you can think about that wonderfulness of how your grandparents lived, it was a sin to waste anything. A lot of that came from, they may have, in my case, at my age, lived through 2 world wars and a depression. But that's the mentality that we have to have. We cannot be known as the consumers of the world and be proud of it.
Cory, I'd like to
Please.
chime in here too as well. For the businesses, it's the choices you make. If you run a restaurant and if you got a lot of takeout and stuff, and you have containers, should you have polystyrene? It's cheap, but how much? It's the cheapest one, so it's the easiest one to go to. But what happens if you go to a plastic? Well, what kind of plastic is it? Is it a plastic that Patty can't recycle? It might be more expensive. It might seem like a better alternative, an environmental alternative, but it may not have been. What about if it's cardboard? You think, okay, that's good. It's compostable. Is it? Because here's something that is little known: is most of those cardboard containers, if they're meant to be waterproof, they have a polyfilm on it that's sprayed on. That polyfilm is not compostable. It wreaks havoc on the composting industry, so it is a huge problem. Now, there are other choices out there. There are silica-based coatings out there that can be chosen that would be truly compostable, would be a benefit. So businesses really need to look at their choices. Those utensils, the cornstarch-based utensils. You think you're doing a great thing for the environment? You're not. Because guess what? It takes 10, 12 compost cycles for those things to actually start breaking down. So you thought you did something good, they're going to end up in the landfill. They're residual. And you probably spent more money getting them. I'm not saying go to the plastic either. We need to find better alternatives. And you guys, as the ones who purchase, you have the biggest power, more than we do. We can go argue this all day long in the Capitol. But without you guys making those choices and forcing the manufacturers to decide, oh, gee, you know what, I need a better product, then that will force design changes. And I'm going to give a quick example if I can. Santa Cruz. Passed an
This was your
ordinance.
question anyway, so go for it.
Okay, there we go. I do it covered it. Santa Cruz passed an ordinance that requires truly compostable materials in all their restaurants, etc. And that includes beverage containers like for Starbucks. Starbucks made a really good decision. So Starbucks, several years ago, entertained the idea of silica-based coated cups for the hot drinks. But the manufacturer at the time, the designer at the time, couldn't make the 12 billion containers per year they need. And so Starbucks tabled it. Well, Starbucks came back just last year and changed that because of one county. One county's ordinance said you cannot have a polyfilm cup. You cannot sell it in our county. And so Starbucks, rather than just saying, okay, I'm going to make one cup for Santa Cruz County and I'm going to make all these other cups for everybody else, rolled out in Canada a silica-based cup. They're bringing it to America next, but they wanted to make sure it was going to work in Canada first before they rolled out in the biggest, the 5th largest economy here in California. But they're going to roll out United States wide too. So there's a case where even a small local government like Santa Cruz County can make a huge difference in how folks choose what they buy and how that pushes product to reach money.
Can I just add one? Same is true for, I don't know if you've been to McDonald's lately, but they were polystyrene. They were styrofoam containers. And Marin County, years and years ago, Fairfax was actually the first in the state to get a plastic bag ban and a polystyrene ban because they went out and did it door to door. They did a mandate, and that's what you've got to do to prevent yourself from being sued by the people who make that stuff. Well, we're all hitting our heads against the wall and banging on tables. Meanwhile, one guy on the committee at the county was in the back of the room and he was calculating things because garbage bills are generally by cubic yard. So polystyrene does not squish down. Paper does. Okay, so he was actually, and on a phone, dialing 1-800-7771, 1-800-7772. Finally, he got to the desk of the guy who was the CEO in Chicago of McDonald's and said, did you know, I took him like a month, but he finally got his private line. Did you know you can save this much in your national garbage bills by moving to paper? That's what they did because of Marin County. Yeah, so it can be done. Yeah, it can be done.
We have so many inspiring examples. You addressed something that I think is on everybody's mind. Everywhere I go, I watch the recycling containers, the garbage, recycling, compost. At theater events, people come out and they stop. And they have this look of panic, and then they kind of dump one in a bin and then walk away as fast as they can. Most people are so confused these days, Patty.
Yeah.
How do they know what's really recyclable?
Well, let me tell you where that doesn't happen. Switzerland. It doesn't happen in Switzerland, and now, interestingly, beyond my belief, it doesn't happen in Italy anymore. And much of my family lives there, and I've been able to go to Northern Europe with my father and colleagues, and they get better participation and cleaner material. I'm not saying that we need to go to garbage police, because that's not an idea that's palatable, right? But we need to be conscious of, and that's why we have all these laws, 1826, 1383, 901, 341, because that science around how much does our waste contribute to greenhouse gas production, depending upon the scientist, is anywhere from 14 to 19%. That's huge. We have control over that, so we need to stop and do it right and label and have it universal.
So what I was talking about, just a little more practically for these folks, there is a place online, I think, that you can go and type anything in.
Right.
Is that right?
Right.
What is that?
Well, we have a part of our website that says, where does it go, Joe? My dad's name is Joe. and it works. That was Kim's idea, another colleague that I'm proud to say is a colleague. Yeah, you just do that on our website, and I'm sure you can on many other good recyclers' websites as well.
So great. So if you have anything you're not sure of, I mean, you just dial it up on your phone. Where does it go, Joe? Just type it into Google. It pops up right away. You type in the material and hit enter, and you'll find out if it's recyclable or compostable or where it should go. It should go in the trash, okay? So we're trying to clear up that confusion. Nicole, deconstruction, you painted the problem perfectly. Hopefully it's not painted wood. Now I can't be, anyway. What do we do here in California? What do we need to do? What are opportunities, and how do we get to more material reuse? Because there's beautiful old redwood in there that could last another 50, 100 years.
Yeah.
And other stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's, I think, where we have to start is by saying, what is this material that nobody cares about or thinks about on a daily basis? And we touch it every day. Woodworkers that I work with are just in awe of this material. It costs 10 times more to go buy this stuff new, and in fact, some cases it just doesn't even exist anymore. So we're talking about heritage wood, old growth redwood, old growth Doug firs. We don't have the ability to cut those trees down anymore. We won't have them for another 300 to 1,000 years. So 300 to 1,000 years. So these trees just don't exist anymore. We are landfilling them or burning them right now. They could be turned into furniture, or they could be turned into shelving. And sorry, what was the question?
So what can we do? What are some good things that we should be doing and could be doing? Are there any opportunities that you're seeing coming?
Yeah, so there's what's kind of happening right now, and the one incentive that has kept my industry, the deconstruction industry, going is this tax incentive. It's basically non-cash charitable contributions. So if you deconstruct your house, you can get a tax deduction for doing so, and it's, long story short, the material gets valued and it helps offset the cost of deconstruction. Because like I said, it's a week of 7 guys doing this as opposed to 1 guy, 1 hour. It's a lot more money to deconstruct a house. But then all those materials are available to be sold again, reused again. And on top of that, all those materials are made of wood that is carbon that is sequestered. So it was a tree at one point, and then it's been sequestered in a house for 50 to 120 years. And then if you use it again and it becomes a table, maybe it can last 300 years again. So then we've sequestered that carbon even longer. So as opposed to turning it into energy, which then it gets released as carbon dioxide or sits in a pile of mulch and releases methane. So one of the things you can do is, if you do decide to take your house down, which I wouldn't recommend, but that's maybe one thing you could do, is if you don't really need to remodel or you don't need to tear your house down, don't do it. Save money and go on a vacation. Maybe a local vacation with your electric car. But I mean, these are the things that we need to start thinking about. Like, what are you individually doing? Like, if you tear your house down, you are literally creating your entire lifetime worth of waste. So these are the types of things we need to start thinking about. And then on our industry side, what I'm encountering is, the wood I was telling you about, the heritage wood, is beautiful. I can turn it into products and sell it for a good price, and I can get a return on my money for the amount of time it takes to denail it and to process it and get it ready and put it for sale. A stick of lumber that is after 1950s, we're losing money every single time. And the problem there, and I've been trying to figure this out, and I think we kind of had a little bit of a discussion this morning about it, is there's so many external costs. And in this case, we're talking about logging, right? So a tree gets cut, it gets transported maybe 100 or so miles to a mill, and then the mill has, you know, these fossil fuel machines that turn it into a stick of lumber, and then it gets transported to Home Depot, and then, you know, they have to stock it at Home Depot, they have to pay people, and then it goes to your house, and then it gets installed. So how come that lumber that goes through all those processes that is gotta cost a lot of money to make that one stick of lumber, how come that's cheaper than what I would sell my lumber at if I could? How come that's cheaper than me getting free lumber and denailing it, and it literally takes maybe 30 seconds to denail a stick of lumber? How come that's more expensive? So if we can figure out what to do with that lumber, because all the other lumber we're pretty sure we can sell. We do it on a regular basis, and woodworkers love it. If you go to Restoration Hardware, they even have reclaimed lumber tables. So it's a thing. So the question is, what do we do with all the lumber that is currently getting sent to biomass, and how can we upcycle that? One of the things, Portland and Palo Alto have passed deconstruction ordinances. These are going to happen. So, which means that we will start recovering more and more materials, but we don't have a market for those materials, for those low-end sticks of lumber. Oregon State is actually, they have a facility called Tallwood, and it's a testing lab, and they are currently testing, and I got the results. So they're positive results, which mean that they're taking basically the lumber that I was talking about and turning it into a new product, and they're not recycling it. So they're actually taking it as is and cutting it and putting it into different types of products.
For the camera, do you want to repeat what you said?
Well, so kind of to answer your question about how do we get people to adopt these sustainable products. One of the things we do, we have a design philosophy called Smart Sustainable Design. And so it touches on three areas. One is economics. How do we produce it, design for manufacturing so that it's close to what we're displacing plastic. And then sustainability, you know, integrating sustainability upstream into the product design. And then the manufacturing of it, trying to integrate the manufacturing of it. So part of that whole process is, though, understanding how they're using the product and then designing it so that there's no change in workflow for the people that are using it. So if they're using a bowl, let's say, or a needle counter, we have a whole line of needle counters, that they function, they look like, they have the tactile feel, everything about the user experience of that is going to be exactly the same as what they would expect. So when it comes in, there's nothing for them to complain about. There's just love to complain. Just little differences are here and there, or surgeons too. So that's what we do, is we design it so that there's no change in workflow. And then it's about how do we align the people, align our values and our mission with the hospital system's values and mission. So a lot of the work, a lot of the early adopters that we've gotten are these faith-based organizations like Dignity Health or Kaiser, where they have a direct goals around the environment and human health. And they know that all this pollution ultimately comes back and it impacts our health. So then we talk to them at the leadership level about what this means and what kind of impact they can have. And then we measure it for them, how much plastic waste we've avoided, and then also how much scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions we've reduced by moving off of petroleum to a plant-based product. And then we feed that back to them. So kind of the whole, you know, we try to hit every point.
I think that is the essence of innovation. It's really understanding what it is the customer needs and aligning with that, like you said, and not creating something that's a little different, saying, all you got to do is do this a little differently, because that doesn't work, especially when people are so busy and tight deadlines, and you know, they've got to meet regulations and all kinds of things, right?
I have just a little story. It's the back door to your front door. Garbage hauling changed in the 50s. Up until that point, your garbage hauler made more money by reusing eyeglasses, bottles, wine bottles, milk bottles, selling back shoes. There was a whole scavenging ethic, which is why our program has been so successful. That and the mentality of you all, the people in Marin County. But it was the dynamic of convenience on the dark side is that we went bananas and started just selling ourselves on convenience-based, individually packaged food. But know that it's an easy. It's only been the last 60 years that we've had this problem. We're upwards of 13 pounds per person per day of waste production. The nearest to us in industrialized country is Italy, 2.4. So we just need to think about less. Yeah, and making it easy. Yeah, so that's my backdoor story to your
Make it easy. Yeah, make it easy to transition over to sustainable.
So we're gonna, in just a couple of minutes, we're gonna transition into a handful of working groups where people can ask direct questions with the idea that you can pose what you need, what you want to do, what you need, what's in your way, and see if you can get some answers to help you get beyond in some way in this field. But I want to make one quick announcement, and then I want to ask one last lightning round of questions. First, we have two folks in the back from GoBox. So circular design is also about that reuse. How do you have stuff that doesn't end up wasted in the end? And so they're about to launch at Whole Foods in San Rafael a pilot to have reusable containers at the deli counter, so that you don't have anything that, not even composted, that it's reuse. When you bring your bags back to the Whole Foods, you bring your container back to, you get a new one when you go to the deli counter. So we're going to pilot that in San Rafael, hope it goes well and goes regional fast, okay? So we want you to come to San Rafael and do that starting October 26th. But here's the lightning round. Does anybody listen to Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me? Okay, great. So Wait, Wait ends always with Peter Segal asking his panelists to offer a prediction based on the news stories of the week. So I'd like to ask you all something we like to call, just take it to the big brain dump. Okay? Based on what we've been talking about here, or the general state of recycling or product redesign, what is your prediction for what's going to happen in the next several years that could really make a difference, or even be a game changer? Let's start with Doug.
I think that as pressure mounts for all the ocean litter we're seeing, as people are starting to accept the fact that yes, when they tear that bird open and there is actually a dead bird and there's actually plastic in there and somebody didn't plant it in there, I think that we're going to see the manufacturers realize that they are part of the problem, and I believe that they're really going to start to step up. We hope that we won't force them to step up. Let's have them do it. We love to work with the manufacturers. We love to work with guys like Rob and help them to make their decisions voluntarily, so we don't have to come in the back door and do it from the state level or the local level and make them comply instead. We love, because they have ideas. We're not the folks with all the ideas. We're just the ones that make sure that we get all going in the same direction. So I would anticipate that the manufacturers, I believe, will start to step up more and more, and we're starting to see a little bit of that now.
Great. Oh?
What was the question again?
Based on what we've talked about here, or the general state of recycling or product design, what's your prediction for what's going to happen in the next several years that could really be a game changer, or at least make a difference?
I predict that human beings are going to stop using big business and are going to start using local business, and that's really going to change the game.
See, you're not all dead here. Rob, how about you?
I think that it kind of gets back to UN Development Goal 12, responsible consumption and production. People are going to really realize the power of the money that we spend, and that there's going to be disruption by these smaller companies, and making the big ones that are entrenched in this old way of doing things have to change because their market's going to be.
Great.
I would absolutely agree with all of what I've heard in this last question. I would just add to that, truth in advertising, EPR2, huge. I see that growing. I remember about 20 years ago in a waste hauling conference in Washington, D.C., plastics guy saying, "We can recycle all of your plastic," and I sat there very timidly waiting. There were several hundred people in the room, and I asked the question, "But you've been saying that, you industry, for a long time, and it's not happening in Marin County, California. Well, what is your name?" And he kind of went, because my dad's been anti-plastic story because of the disillusionment of being lied to about that industry, to be quite honest. So he came down off the podium, gave me his card, came out and he said, I'm going to take all of your plastic off your hands. And he did come out several weeks later, saw 40 bales. He would have filled this entire area. And he said, wow, look what you guys have done. Proud of you. This is great. I'm going to go call my office and have a bite to eat. You must still be eating. He never came back. So getting to the truth, and I believe that the next generation will help us to do that. And I believe in the small business approach, EPR, and have at it. It's all good. Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate the panel. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you.